some general references to some things that they might do differently. Well, we'll consider this, or we'll think about that. Sorry, gang, we've had folks that have been thinking about making changes for 10, 12 years. And sometime you've got to have the rubber hit the road, pedal the metal, move things forward. So again, this stuff hasn't changed since things got started here about 15 years ago. So David has more experience than we have here. That's all you need to know. That's all we need to know. Okay. So what? Can you do that?
So boil that little piece down. For any course, every 3 years, those questions have to be answered in 6 to 8 paragraphs, I think you said.
That'd be cool, you know. Now, some of us are more verbose in writing than other folks. I've seen some folks who could write 3 sentences and convey more than some people can do in 3 pages. We've all seen that, I apologize. But we've all seen that type of thing. So you don't have to throw everything in there. Yes?
So what are some examples of acceptable, I mean, so, because we say, so we give exams.
Yep.
Okay, do those count? I mean, do you know, we need to know,
Okay.
I think also what, we need to go into that counts, what, and Greg mentioned, you know, we don't just wanna get a good score, which is
Yeah.
true, like, we wanna be able to do this correctly. We also, if we get a good score, is maybe saying that we are doing something right, so how, like, what counts, and how is it scored, and
Good
decides
question.
that?
I think it was Kim that said we're doing things that are assessment, but we just don't know that they are, or we don't know how to present it. Okay. So let's talk about exams, and I'm glad you brought that up. As a whole, what does an 85% on a test tell you that the student knew or they didn't know?
85% of the information on the test, right?
But where do you need to make the improvements in what you're teaching or how you're teaching?
Say that again?
Okay. Where would the 85% tell you what you need to do to improve student retention of material?
Well, I guess you go back and look at the 15% that they didn't get right, and then you
Okay.
talk about that.
Okay. Now you're looking at item analysis. Okay. So if the class didn't respond well to my second essay question, then I go back and look at that reflectively and say, did I botch it in terms of writing that piece? Okay. Or did that piece ask for integration of material? And I know that most of the first year students are going to have problems with that, but the seniors in feeds and feeding are going to be able to ace that. So if we look at item analysis, now we have a very strong piece because we're getting down to the individual topic level.
So is that something we say, we gave 1, 2, 3 exams, we did an item analysis, we looked at the 15% that the class as a whole got incorrect, and we concentrated on those, and then did further assessments on that?
That'd be cool.
Or what?
Okay, so if you could come in and say, I recognize, and I'm going to go back to the integration of material piece, because that's something that our students are chronically weak on. Students didn't demonstrate an ability to integrate material from here, here, and here with respect to the absorption of vitamin D. Just to use a nutritional example. Okay. As a result, what did I do to try to improve that? Well, I tried to talk about transport proteins. I tried to talk about where larger molecules are absorbed in the digestive tract. Okay, so I tried to touch on these other things. B12 would be a better example with a transport protein. So we could talk about that. That's site-specific for the last 3 feet of the ilium that involves the intrinsic factor, so we could try to bring all those things together. And I'm trying to use just some examples, and I'm sorry that they're nutrition and they're not equine studies or vet tech or reproductive physiology or whatever. Those are just things we want to do. How are we doing? Have I answered your question at all, or have I created more?
Nope, that makes sense.
I'll do it.
Okay, so I'm through grading an exam, and I think to myself, what if your students got this question about what the accuracy of an EPD is wrong? So do I need to go through and count how many got it wrong, or do I need to just write down that quite a few of them did, and then what I did about it to either correct it for that class or correct it before I teach the class the next time? Now, how much detail should I be dealing with here? Because we don't have time to do statistical analysis on what we did wrong.
No, it's not to say that we did things wrong, but students didn't necessarily respond to what we did by retaining the information. I can think to myself, these are the ones that got wrong, and write myself a note, but I don't really wanna go back and count up how many of them got it wrong. There's a trap there, because I could fall into the trap of trying to prescribe for someone else while I did, okay? And there's a fallacy in that that's a mile wide and a couple of centuries deep. Basically, with a 6-question test, it wasn't that hard for me to go through and be able to summarize that, okay, question 4 was the problem, and then here was the type of thing. Because when I handed the exams back, like I think most of us would probably do, we'd go through the test, okay? And I would show the class basically with a histogram for each question, what the scores were and where the problems were, okay? So for me, this was a part of trying to communicate back to the class that if you had a problem here, you weren't alone, okay? And if you excelled there, congratulations, because you were better than the average type bear. We all teach differently. I couldn't follow the style that you teach. I couldn't. I've sat in on Tom's classes. I applaud his style. If I tried to imitate it, I would just be a phony. Okay. So we have to do what works for us. We need the south half of the table to start asking some questions. Sir?
Could I point out the advantage of a 3-year cycle?
Please do.
It's not that you just do this once every 3 years, but you actually have the opportunity